settle in and listen to our mixtape and now the music vanishes. Enjoy your bottom sandwiches.
We're here with Isaac Marion, author and YouTuber from Outer Edge Outpost. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself. Like, when did you know that you wanted to become an author?
Age 14, roughly. Just kind of started writing stuff then and never stopped. And yeah, just been, I mean, I knew I wanted to from that age, and it wasn't until my mid-20s that it seemed like an actual possibility.
So that tends to be a thing. Like I was telling you a little bit ago, my mom was an English teacher, and books were kind of put in my hand for as long as I can remember. So I kind of knew young too that I really enjoyed writing. I think most writers, even if they don't know that's what they want to do, I think they kind of have. I think they have some kind of like they just know they love a good story and they know they like putting pen to paper, even if they're not quite sure that's where they want to end up. But I think it starts out great for a lot of them. So
I used to kind of juggle between 3 major mediums. I would do a project in music for a while, and then I would switch to writing and then do visual art. And I kind of shuffled between the 3 of those for a long time. And I just eventually realized that writing was the one I wanted to focus on because it's the most, you kind of get the most bang for your buck. Like it's the most rewarding with the least amount of agony. It still has plenty of agony, don't get me wrong. But as far as like the tools and the medium of it and just being able to transfer your thoughts, directly into your audience rather than having to go through all these layers of mediation, it's very clean and pure. So I settled on that because it was like, this is, if my goal is to just, connect with people and kind of share what's in my head, it doesn't get any cleaner than that. So
most people,
anyone listening on audio is missing out, right? It's the full assault from the cat.
You guys don't know at home, if you're doing the audio portion of this, but we actually have a 4th guest on the show. So, which
this is Bob. It's really the star of my YouTube channel. Everyone's just like, yeah, you're okay, but let's see more Bob, and he delivers what the fans ask for.
Not gonna lie, it was one of our questions: is how is Bob?
There you go.
So I think most people obviously know Warm Bodies. I personally read the book years ago. I loved it. I saw the movie. I liked it quite a bit too. But I kind of, before we get into any of that, I kind of wanted to talk about, your writing life prior to Warm Bodies. If I'm not mistaken, you published a couple books on your own before you ever got there. Can you tell us a little bit about that experience?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't call it publishing. It wasn't even what counts as self-publishing these days. It was really just, I printed some copies and and sold them, by hand, basically off my blog back then. I think I printed, because I started, like I said, when I was 14. So I wrote 2 books in that sort of era. They were like, what you'd expect from a 14-year-old writing a fantasy saga. And tried to sell those. And then I did another book that in my like late teens, early 20s, that was a little more serious, and printed, I think, like 200 copies of that. But that was really the extent of my publishing. And then I kind of realized, like, this isn't really worth it. At the time, there were no resources for independent publishing. There was no Amazon, nothing like that. So if you wanted to do it yourself, it was a lot of work. And I just decided, like, there's no way I can continue like this. I'm just going to sit on it until I can actually get in the door of real publishing. And so, yeah, technically I self-published 3 books, but I don't know if I count them.
They count.
Yeah.
Hey, look,
some people really like the second one that I did, and people keep asking me, when are you going to reprint this? And I'm like, yeah, I'm not. I wrote it when I was 19. I'm not putting that out there again.
You got to pay your dues, man. I go back and read some of my like real early stuff, and I'm like, okay, this was bad, but there's sparks in there. There are things in there where I'm like, that was kind of cool though.
Yeah.
Like, you can see...
Even the one when I was 14, there's some sparks in there. And it's like the kind of thing that I dream of someday kind of pulling a Stephen King with The Dark Tower and coming back to a book that I wrote 40 years ago and be like, okay, now I'm going to do the series, because it still kind of has a hold on me, but it's way down the road.
Yeah. And I warned Matt, and I'm going to try to be good about it because he does have an appointment later. But I could geek out about some of this stuff with you forever. Like, it's just because like to hear somebody say these things, I'm like, no, I get that totally. It's
Yeah,
like you want to write something
same
when
here.
you're young, and it's like I got this really good idea, and then you try to do it, and you're like, yeah, that sucked. Then when you get older, you're like, now maybe
Yeah.
I should try that really good idea. So been doing
Yeah,
that myself for
the
years.
ideas are still good. It's just you don't have the skill to execute it well yet at that time,
Yeah.
and you're not aware of how derivative you're being, and just kind of the perspective isn't wide enough. I look back on some of the stuff I wrote back then that I thought at the time was so original and so fresh, and I'm like, this was just straight up copy of this and that, and I somehow thought no one would notice. So now
Well, I
I'm
will.
hyper aware of everything, just for better or worse.
It's all right. I will say that Warm Bodies is a really unique take on the zombie genre, which can tend to get a little stale at times. I'll admit, and I'm diehard zombie movie fan. Personally met George Romero. I have a tattoo from Night of the Living Dead.
Mm.
Uh, but getting like a unique perspective on a pretty full genre is kind of cool. So where exactly where did the idea for Warm Bodies come from? How did that kind of start?
Well, didn't start with wanting to write in that genre. So I think part of the reason it ended up so different is just because it kind of came from the opposite direction, where I had this concept that had been mulling over in my head of just like kind of what I was going through in my life, and kind of struggling with depression, and this just kind of this general sense of alienation that I felt was potent, and I wanted to explore it in some way, but I didn't really have the vehicle for it at the time, and I wasn't just gonna write like a normal, story about me talking about feelings. There had to be something to it, and, kind of a parallel to that at the same time, I had been doing a lot of, kind of literary experiments with perspective, like writing stories from the POV of really odd things, like, did one from a cat, did one from, like, a pixel on a computer screen, or from a stoplight. Just, like, I would kinda dive into this character, without really any plan for the story, and just like, what would it be like to, what how would a stoplight see the world, like, what its function is to stop all these people from doing what they wanna do, so it's kind of an asshole, and just, like, extrapolate from there. So I was doing a lot of that with short stories, and, I wrote one very, very short story. It was like a page and a half or something, from the point of view of a zombie, just because I wasn't extremely well versed in that genre at the time, but I was, of course, aware of the pop culture of it all, and, just thought, what would it feel like? What would they be thinking about? And I wrote this little, slice of life, very short, and then later on, it kind of occurred to me to connect those two ideas, where it's like, here's me, I've just moved to the city after my kind of suburban youth, and well, not even suburban, like rural youth, and was kind of disconnecting from like my old religious beliefs, and my kind of the whole culture I grew up in, and it just showed up in the city, and I'm like, I don't know who I am. I don't know what my life is about. I don't know what, I should be doing. I'm just sort of working and going through the motions, and feeling really disconnected from everything, and no pleasure in life, and like, this feels a lot like what I would imagine a zombie would be like. Traditionally, they have no identity, they have no real awareness, but they must have, in any version of it, they have to have some kind of consciousness, because they interact with the world, they do things. So no matter how, destroyed your uh uh medulla is, or whatever, you still have to be aware of something. So I thought, you know, what would it be like to explore that point of view, and kind of feel, um, you know, the perspective of, a creature that is so disconnected from humanity, and just kind of ran with that.
Yeah, and it spawned a couple other novels, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it was a series, three novels and a prequel novella, so you could call it a trilogy plus or something like that. Um, and yeah, those were all kind of planned, though I didn't think I would actually get the chance to write them. So like I had kind of the rough sketch of the story in my mind, and then but never thought that that book would be the one that kind of like got me an audience. So yeah, wrote the rest of them with a little bit of a delay, which was probably what, prevented my career from taking off. And but did eventually do them, and they're out there, and the story is finished. And Warm Bodies is 18% of it total, which is kind of going by word count. Sort of kills me when vast majority of people only know the first book, and I'm
Only
like,
know
that's
there's
like the
one.
first chapter.
Yeah.
We don't really have much to talk about if you only read the first chapter of the books.
Well, hopefully that with all the videos and stuff you've been posting, and I've seen a lot of cool interaction. People will start going and picking up the additional ones.
Yeah.
I have a question to ask you. I'm not going to ask you one that I know you get asked all the time. I'm not going to ask you what R's name is, but I'm curious if you know what his name is.
I do know,
Okay.
and it is the breadcrumbs are distributed throughout the series. To If there's any doubt, by the end of the series, you definitely know that I know. A few people have figured it out, but I've made kind of a sacred vow to never acknowledge publicly if anyone gets it right, because I don't feel like it's accomplishes anything for me to say what it is. It kind of just kills the mystery and ruins the point of it. So
I
I
dig.
let people figure it out.
Yeah.
But there's clues, throughout that have led a few people to it, but very few.
I love when people do that. It's very
Yeah.
John Carpenter with The Thing, where he knows. He'll tell you straight up,
Yeah.
I know if one of them is the thing and which one is the thing, but I'll never tell anyone. And I'm like,
Yeah.
There's
he
gonna be
says
a
it's
lot of
like,
weird like
here's hints.
filmmaker deathbed confessions. It's like it was Childers.
I feel like that kind of situation is like it makes more sense for people to wonder, because it is, a plot point, and it's like part of the whole situation that they could know. But I feel like in mine particular, I mean, it's a name, like a name. What name could there be that would be like a revelation when you hear it? It would inevitably be disappointing. So I'm just like, I'm never gonna just say it, because then you'd be like, oh, okay, I guess. And like, yeah, what did you expect? It's a single word.
Like it's gonna change everything suddenly.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
what?
It does have, some thematic relevance that is sort of what the clues point toward, but it's not gonna be, crack the whole story open or anything.
I said his name is Grogu, okay? Like, it's one of those things people lose their minds over.
Yeah.
So you
R just means
that would be funny, actually.
we'll bleep that just in case that's what it is.
So I've been hearing rumors of a TV series. Do you know anything about that?
So
Is
have
that
I.
still in the works? He says, so have I.
I've been hearing rumors about it for many years now, and I continue to. I heard more rumors about it the beginning of this year.
Yeah.
About every year I get an email from the team working on it, and you're like, hey, just checking in, we're picking it back up. We've got a new plan. We're moving forward and looking for this and that. And I'm like, great. Like it's I don't know why it's so difficult, but it's not dead. I know that much. I mean, they
Or is it
announced it that it
undead?
was really going to happen. I
Oh.
mean, it kind of feels like it at this point, because it just keeps stumbling forward. But yeah, they got pretty far with it. I think like 3 years ago, they actually went as far as announcing that it was happening. It was like in the works. And then for reasons that I never know about, because I only hear after the fact, what happens behind the scenes, but it fell apart. And they kind of went back to the drawing board and started over. And I think and the second time they were about to do it was when COVID happened, and they're like, well, nothing's happening now, so we're just, and then they were about to get started again, and there was the writer's strike. And it's just,
Strike.
there's a lot of like global disasters keep kind of inconveniencing me
Yeah.
personally.
Well, I can say a couple of things, man. The first thing is I've heard of other projects that I was like, what happened to them? And now that everything is settling down, they're starting to take off, which is cool. And the other thing is,
Don't say that. Don't say things are settling down.
well, I mean, they're like stuff has went into production that I thought was going to be going into
Yeah.
production for years, and it's just got put on hold. The other thing is, if they went back to the drawing board early on, that's probably a good thing because that probably means something just wasn't right, and you want them to try to get it
Yeah.
as right as they can get it, and not just throw something out to throw it out. Because,
Yeah.
like Matt said, these are the story is really unique. I mean, I don't usually like it when I'm watching like a zombie movie or whatever, and they start giving them personality, but you somehow humanized zombies, and it was just because like you said, you took the perspective of what are they thinking? What are they going through? What is life like for them? And when you read that, it's kind of like you start to connect with them. You're like, oh, I get what he's trying to say. We're all sort of zombies sometimes. We're all just going through the motions. And so I'm really looking forward to what they could do with it. And I would rather they don't screw that up, but the books are always there if they do. So
Yeah. I think they're trying to figure out how to present it in a way that, clicks with the modern media landscape. I think zombies in particular, it's a property, kind of like a public property that ebbs and flows throughout decades. And
very
sometimes
true.
when Warm Bodies came out, it was having a resurgence for whatever reason, which I wasn't even aware of until after I started to try to publish the book and found out that everyone already had their zombie book for the year. It's like, wait, what? This is news to me that I jumped on a bandwagon, but I guess I'm on one. And then there was like that big thing where there was stuff coming out all the time, and then it just cut like
Yeah.
abruptly. Everyone's like, okay, we're done. And I
Yeah.
was like right in the middle of my series, like, wait, I got
He's like,
two
I'm
more
not
for
done.
you. So I
Um,
think that now there's all the new Walking Dead shows and stuff, still kind of keeping it going, but they're just trying to figure out like what's the angle on this thing that we can fit it into the current cultural landscape. It's probably not quite the same as 2013. So
right. Now I was telling you a little bit ago, I actually stumbled across your TikToks, and that kind of turned me onto your YouTube channel, and that made me want to reach out to you because I was watching your stories on YouTube. I want to encourage everybody to go check out Outer Edge Outpost, which I believe is on the screen right now. You can go
Yep.
find it there, um, because this is a way people can really experience your story. But I want them to go there and get the full thing. But can you give us like a quick brief what happened that made you kind of decide to move, for lack of a better term, off the grid? You're not really fully off the grid, but you definitely took a different approach to living than most people do. Can you kind of give us a brief
Yeah,
explanation as to why that was?
I I am off the grid in every sense except my power source. Technically, that disqualifies me, but everything else is provided on site, and I feel like by most people's definition, considering I live in the middle of nowhere, completely disconnected from services of any kind, it's pseudo off grid. But yeah, yeah. So I lived in Seattle for most of my adult life, and it was about 6 years ago or something like that. I kind of just decided that city life wasn't really making sense for me. I wasn't really that interested in the features that it was providing as far as urban delights, amenities, bars, social activity, etc. It was just like wasn't really using it, and I'm like, why am I um, you know paying money to rent a cabin in the middle of nowhere to take a vacation, to go out, get my head straight and figure out my books and all the stuff that I actually care about. Why is that where I'm leaving to? Why don't I live in that? Because I'm not using this urban stuff, and it was all backwards basically. So I started first step, I moved to, a fairly remote cabin on a kind of a coastal island in Washington that was pretty remote, but still kind of had a foot in the door, had easy access to the city, and was still kind of trying to have both lives. And I did that for a few years and realized like this is still too much, it's still too close. I want to go all the way out, to the outer edge and just like see what happens to be, really far removed to the point where it's not even a temptation anymore because it's just too far away. So now I'm 4 hours away from Seattle. I'm like way out in central Washington, on, the nearest town of any kind is a half hour away, and that's like not much of a town to speak of. and Seattle is the nearest city at 4 hours away. So I'm pretty out there, and living in a little, basically a shed. I was originally gonna build a cabin out here and have the building site down below with the septic tank all ready to go. And I'm just staring at it from my little shed up on the hill, which is supposed to be my storage shed. And then one thing led to another, and like, I guess I'm living in it. So it's just yeah, I have an outhouse. I have a sink, but no bathroom. No I mean, I'm on internet is Starlink, so that really saved my life as far as, being able to still be connected somewhat without being on any actual lines. So I'm not like as disconnected as I'm as disconnected as I want to be, but I don't have really any presence in civilization. So I'm just kind of out here. Like, it's a very beautiful landscape. I'm in the middle of nowhere. I don't really have any neighbors. Just kind of living on the edge of a cliff and with my cat and doing my projects, which is what I wanted to do, is basically get everything else out so that I didn't really have anything else anywhere else to go, but writing my books and whatever it may be.
So, I mean, you kind of just answered the next question of if it's influenced your writing at all. But I mean, is there anything that, kind of related to your lifestyle now that's kind of worked its way into some of your writing?
Yeah, I mean, the novel that I'm trying to get published right now, that I just finished last year, very much like I started it when I was living in that cabin on the island where I was still kind of part of society, and it was sort of about like the death throes of that lifestyle of trying to participate, trying to be part of culture in an active way. And the characters in the book are in a band, and they're kind of like trying to keep their career going. And then as I was writing it, I had this whole big shift in my own life and moved out to this desolate plateau, and it definitely seeped into the story in a lot of ways. I won't say exactly how without spoiling the whole thing, but it's kind of my progression of pulling the plug on those efforts was kind of mirrored in the character, which is always how I've kind of done books. Is they tend to mirror my own life in some sort of way. They kind of like a way for me to simulate an action, a forward motion of some kind. Where with Warm Bodies, it was like, what might it be like to reconnect with the world and get out of this sort of lifeless gray state that I was in, and I sort of simulated what kind of mental leaps I might take to get out of that, and then sort of worked. And then now I'm sort of doing the opposite of like, what would it be like to leave all of that, but with intention this time, not with just accidentally, becoming a corpse, but intentionally dying. That's not a cry for help. The way I phrase that.
I was gonna say we know how to get a hold of you if we need to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It does feel a little bit, self-destructive at times when I'm just like, how did this happen? But it's self-destructive. I feel like it's a means to an end. It feels like I'm working towards something with this, sort of putting myself through these trials, and I haven't quite discovered it yet, but I'm on the path.
Well, I will say from watching the few clips I've seen on YouTube, you picked a great spot to move
It's a nice
to. It
spot.
looks amazing.
Yeah.
Like, just so
Every
nice.
time I wake up, I mean, I have the whole eastern horizon is just so far away. The view is, it's like cars are little dots going from the entire 180 degrees of my view. The sun comes up right in the middle of the mountain range, and every morning I just walk out there like, this right here, it's only 10 minutes long. It's worth it.
Yeah. I can imagine. And I imagine at nighttime, just looking up at the sky is probably,
Yeah.
It's
actually
Sasquatch
one of,
country
I
out
think,
there.
the dark sky index. I forget the exact way it's measured, but I think my spot is like the third darkest possibility on the scale. So it's like the only way you get much darker than here is going like to the Arizona desert, places like that.
Yeah.
I can see the whole Milky Way most clear nights. It's just like you're swimming in it.
So I keep telling my wife, I
Might
just
need
want
to
to go
visit
out.
you sometime.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah,
like, I
come
want
on
to go
out.
out.
Have a campfire.
I want to go
Hell
out
yeah.
someplace like that just once, just so I can see like the stars. I lived in Colorado for 4 years, and we lived at one point for about a year. We lived sort of up closer to the foothills, and I remember the difference between that suburbs of Denver, because when there's so much city around, you don't really see the sky. You do, but you don't. And just once, I want to go out and
Yeah.
experience like just what the night sky looks like somewhere where it's just clear sky. So
Yeah.
that's
It's so
weird.
shocking. I mean, it's like it feels like the difference between watching like a 320p video and then 4K. It's like you see the stars in either way, but in between it's just like blocks, you know, in the city, it's just like orange cloud from
Yeah.
the gross like city light reflecting off the haze. And you see, you know, the brightest stars here and there, but all the details lost. And then you come out here and it's just like your eyes explode. It's just like
Yeah, I'm
so
afraid it's going to
sharp.
be overwhelming because I remember I didn't see the ocean for the first time till I was 19. And I remember standing, we actually went to a small town and we were right by the ocean. My mom and I walked down. We got there late, so it was dark, but we walked down and we're standing on the beach. And I remember just feeling like very like tiny, like so small when I was like, so I
Yeah.
can't imagine what it would feel like to just be over. That was just the ocean. Now this is outer space. This is the sky. Like I'm gonna feel like
Yeah.
nothing, but that's kind of cool too. So
Yeah.
just
It's
want,
kind of comforting to feel like nothing. I find that the less important I feel, the more I enjoy life. The more I feel like
yeah.
what I do doesn't really matter. People like have crises about this, but I'm like, sweet. I it was stressful when it
Takes
mattered.
a lot of weight off my shoulders.
Yeah.
I'm in the big scheme of things. I am not that
Yeah.
important.
It's very
um,
comforting.
I do want to bring up real quick. You kind of mentioned it a little bit ago, but you do music as well. I'm kind of curious. I know you've performed stuff. It's funny because I was watching one of your videos and then I realized, oh, all the music in this was you, and I got a kick out of that. But I'm kind of curious. Was music something you were raised on? Was it around you a lot growing up, or like how did that come about?
No. I mean,
No.
I was raised basically like you could probably meet all the check marks of the FBI cult list of like what constitutes a cult. Technically, it was a Christian church, but it was like living under the dome. It was incredibly isolating, and we weren't
Sounds
allowed to
familiar.
participate in
Nothing
any
about
kind of culture, really. They had music at the churches, but it was, you know, 30 years dated, and it's just there was no access to what was alive and vital in culture. Anything that was part of, you know, the world was inherently suspect and usually rejected. So yeah, I had to find it all on my own. Basically, when I left my hometown and moved to Seattle was the first time I really started to get access to culture and drank it up pretty thirstily, and um, started a band. I joined a band when I was like 19 and played kind of peripheral instruments for a while, um, and then I started my own band when I was 23, 22, and we put out one album, and then I did it was kind of like what I was talking about earlier, how I used to just shuffle between, like I would start a band, make an album, like learn how to record music all by myself, make something, make this huge production, send out press kits, you know, get on local radio, do a bunch of shows, and then just like drop it and walk away. As soon as it didn't like take off the way I wanted it to, I would instantly just completely abandon the entire field. So we had one big album, and then I did it one solo album, just kind of like a home studio project the following year, and then kind of dropped it. So it's in there, but I haven't done it with any serious intention for a pretty long time. So doing these YouTube videos was kind of, it was fun to dust that off and remember how it works and kind of just enjoy that sort of low stakes version of it where I'm not, you know, in a room trying to figure out a song structure with a bunch of guys so that we can get on the radio and get rich. It's just like, it's ambience for the background on my YouTube videos, and it's very, very chill.
I want to say, like, hearing your story, hearing you talk about things, like it's actually pretty inspirational to a lot of us out there. I was telling you earlier, I wrote a novel. I've been writing since I was 12, and uh, again, my mom was an English teacher, so anything I ever wrote, I handed it to her, and she would help me edit it, you know, clean it all up. And I started writing a book, and then she passed away before I finished it. So I pushed through it. It took me years, man. I finally finished this book in 2019, and you kind of get to this point. You're like, okay, now what? Like, what do I do now? So I put it up online, and just recently I decided like I have it. It's sitting there. I have all this audio equipment. I can do all this stuff. I'm going to give it away as an audiobook. So I did that. It's out there now. But I think for a lot of people, including myself for a long period of time, it can be really disheartening when you are working on your book or your music or your art and you put so much into it and you get little response and you start thinking to yourself like maybe I'm no good. Maybe it's just me. But getting to hear your story and the things that you went through, and I've read your book, and I'm going to tell you, you are good. Like you're a good writer, and but to see like it's a struggle all around, I think it gives a lot of people hope. Like, okay, it's just kind of a messed up industry, right? It's a weird industry, and it's not necessarily me, So getting to see the stuff you've gone through, and it's really helped out, I think, and I see a lot of people interacting with your videos, and I read a lot of the comments, and just really appreciative of the things that you do and what you're showing us now. I think it's really cool that you're making these videos and that you're talking to people about all the things you've went through. So thank you for that. It means a lot.
Just it feels good to share. But there's definitely been times where I've wondered, should I even be talking about this? Is it just making it worse, digging me deeper into the hole? But I think, my story with publishing is like some people find it kind of cathartic or comforting to know that everybody has struggled at every level. And then there's people who are like, that's incredibly discouraging because if you can have, a New York Times bestseller made into a movie, sell hundreds of thousands of copies, and then still instantly get dropped, like what hope do I have? And I'm like, shit, yeah. I mean, I never thought it was that grim either. I was amazed at how little momentum in that industry. It's like they just don't care. It does not. From what I hear, it's just gotten a lot worse even since then. So I don't know.
Absolutely.
I'm not the most inspiring character to come to as far as writing careers. My outlook on that these days is kind of similar to how I feel about those YouTube videos, where it's like I don't have any expectations of there being a path for this. I don't expect to like make everything I do take off and become my new career. Even the one that already was my career, I'm like, I gonna keep writing because I enjoy it and because I feel like it's the thing that I'm probably best at. And even if people are telling me like the publishing industry is in shambles, nobody can get books done, nobody cares anymore, all this incredible discouragement, I'm just like, well, I'm still gonna do it, and, like, if nothing else, I can just, offer it like that, like I did with my last book in Warm Bodies series. I basically self-published it. It was, I worked through a company who kinda helped distribute it, but it was essentially independent, and, I would like to, get back into the machine, get picked up again and sort of be carried away, not have to do all that myself. But if that doesn't work out, like there's a lot of different ways to express yourself, and I'm enjoying the freedom from that. Like a big part of the reason I came out here, other than the beautiful skies and all that stuff, was like I want to be in a place that's so cheap that I don't have to be successful to survive.
I feel that
because
sometimes.
because like living in the city and even that island that I moved to, I mean, it's just the demands
Mhm.
on your career are so insane when you're just paying like thousands of dollars in rent and just like all the costs. You have to be publishing and operating on such a high level to maintain that it's just like this constant whip cracking at your back. And I don't want to write to survive. I want to be able to make stuff that I like, that I and not be, feeling like I'm working for a boss who is, cracking the whip all day. And the only way I could figure out to guarantee that is just to like have no expenses. So this way, like I can write the weirdest shit I want to. I can publish it however I want to, even if it's incredibly not profitable. If I don't have any costs, then it still works. So
I guess that's kind of what I
that's my
meant by
strategy.
that. It's like there are there are people like myself who don't get me wrong, if suddenly someone were to like offer me millions for yeah, fine, cool, I'm on board. But
Yeah.
like I've just wanted to write since I was a kid, so I write. And that's what I mean by hearing your story, you give like hope. It's like, then just write. Like it's okay. Like if that's brings you joy, you're allowed to just get joy out of it. If you don't get anything else, that's okay. Someone out there is going to enjoy what
Yeah.
you did, and they're going to appreciate it. And I haven't gotten a ton of feedback, but I was telling Matt yesterday, all the feedback I've gotten has been positive. And it's like, I don't care if 200 or 20,000 people read what I wrote. I just want to write, and I'm glad that I can share it with somebody. And that's why I say I really appreciate that you're sharing your story with so many people. It means a lot to me. So I was pretty excited to talk to you. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
So
Cool.
Yeah. So, well, Isaac, you've been great to have on. We encourage everybody to go check out his YouTube channel, which is on the screen right now at Outer Edge Outpost, and his TikTok. And we'll put links down in the show notes. Before we let you go, we got one very important question. How is Bob doing? Doing all right?
Bob
he disappeared.
He's MIA.
He got tired of
comes and
us.
goes. He roams free. He went on a hike with me today, like a dog. I was off trekking in those hills, and he just like showed up by my side. He's like, "Where are we going?" So he got a taste for the open range, and he's out of there exploring it. But he'll be back.
It's awesome. Well, like I said, it's been great having you. And like I said, everybody check it out. Outer Edge Outpost on YouTube, and follow him on TikTok. All right. Thanks.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thanks, Isaac. We appreciate it.
Yeah, it was fun.
Thank you for watching the mixtape. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Click the bell icon for notifications when new videos come out. And remember to always stay awesome.